Is it finally time to withdraw from this ridiculous foreign court and take back control of our laws?
Well, yes, I think that is an option, though I think, as you heard there are issues about replacing what they rule on with our own law. But this is the interesting thing. You know, we really don't have to jump to it and obey them. We can always say we're going ahead with this. And if in the future British law upholds what you've said, we'll bring the migrants back. But meanwhile, they're going. Now, you may say, can we just ignore a ruling of an international court? Well, normally we don't. We have a record of 80% compliance with ECHR rulings. Germany, 63%. Spain, 39%. Russia, 10%. So you don't actually have to do what they've said.
Well, in fact, we have done, and we've got a bit of credit in the bank. But Anne, forgive me, I wanted to do something a bit different here because I thought, look, I just thought, look, let's take a look at some of the ECHR's greatest hits. It's top of the pops, or bottom of the pops, depending on which way you want to look at it, OK? So coming in at number 3 tonight, ladies and gentlemen, there's the Nigerian criminal who was awarded the equivalent of £7,600 in damages, courtesy of the ECHR, after the Home Office tried to deport him following multiple stints in jail, dating back to 1989, for crimes ranging from theft to sexual assault. And he's in at number 3 this evening. I mean, we can't deport someone who's been done for theft and sexual assault multiple times.
Well, you wonder what sort of family life he had while he was in prison. If he'd been jailed all those number of times, it is a ridiculous ruling. It is one of many ridiculous rulings. For example, I don't think this would be on your dotty list, but ECHR proclaimed that we should give prisoners the vote. They proclaimed that in something like 2005, and as late as 2018, it hadn't happened.
Yes. Coming up in at number 2, Anne, there's the 2004 ruling stating prisoners should be allowed to vote, regardless of their crimes, following a case launched by convicted murderer John Hurst, who actually launched the case. And this, thankfully, is one case where the UK actually ignored the ECHR's ruling, but the point still stands, doesn't it, Anne? They are now basically... We've got criminals in this country who we have convicted. So we have convicted. They've committed crimes, presumably against, for the most part, people from this country, in this country, and our courts have decided that we should lock them away. And then someone else from, I don't know, somewhere in Azerbaijan or wherever the heck they are, decides to tell us that...
in the middle of the night, One judge in the middle of the night decided this. I was saying one judge at night decided this. And certainly, for most of today, I don't know if they've revealed it yet. We don't even know who he is.
But that's not justice, is it?
No, that is absolutely not open justice. What I would say, and I'll say it very quickly because I know we're confined for time.
All right.
This was set up in 1950, this court. Britain was a founding member. 1950, just a few years after the appalling circumstances and persecutions and genocide of the Second World War. And it was set up in a very different world. There were still empires. There was largely peace. It hadn't broken down into independence and civil wars. People living remotely didn't really know how the West lived. Now there's television wherever you look, and I've seen it in some very, very unlikely places, in Africa, in shanty compounds. You can see television, you can see how the West live. And now, unlike in 1950, you can get to the other side of the world if you can find a way to do it. It's a different ball game completely, and therefore we need to look again at this court.
Yeah, 100%. And you hit the nail on the head there. Just before we move on to number 1, because I'm going to keep the public into suspense, But you raise a good point there, because that's one of the big arguments that people have been making, to me anyway, over the last couple of days. We were one of the founding members of this. We joined it in 1950. Winston Churchill was a driving force behind it. Churchill would be turning in his grave if he knew we were pulling out of it. It's a different world, Anne, isn't it? It's a different world now.
Completely different. It's the same thing goes for the Convention on Refugees, which I think was 1954. A completely different world. And therefore, what we may have founded, signed up to in good faith and treated with respect, and we have, because we're amongst the top compliance, it has changed. The world has changed. You've got to review the case for it.
Yeah, we do. OK. Are you ready, Anne? I think the public are. It's time to see who's coming at number 1 this week on our ECHR Top of the Pops. And in first place, There's hate preacher Abu Qatada, who could forget? So, who, along with 10 other men held on suspicion of terror offences, were awarded £26,000 in total by the ECHR because it breached their right to liberty. I mean, goodness gracious me. Yeah, you've got your head in your hands. I feel like pulling my hair out when I hear that. This is a guy who, by definition, wanted to destroy this country and our entire way of life and the Western world. And we end up paying him.
Yeah. And, you know, there's an equally balmy case that came up. Unfortunately, the ECHR did throw this one out. But it was somebody who said that he was a victim of slavery because they made him carry the boat down to the channel before getting on it. But seriously, that was argued. That was argued. They will argue anything, and they get away with it.
You know, it's interesting because I'm wondering now, I dish it out quite regularly about, we're a bit of a soft touch in this country. And OK, in some senses we are. But actually, when it comes to this, one of the main reasons we're a soft touch when it comes to some of these rules and regs is because we're led through the nose sometimes by a foreign court. So it's actually, we wouldn't be as much of a soft touch, would we, if we were left to our own devices?
Well, I have to say, I was immensely reassured and very surprised when all of our courts came out in the government's favour, you know, right up to the Supreme Court. I was very, very surprised because usually our problem's here, quite honestly,
Yes.
an over-interpretation of the rules. Usually our problem is here. On this occasion, it's very firmly an ECHR. I just think we ignore it, quite honestly. We ignore it as we have done other rulings and we get on with it.